I'm not really an ice guy. My body's like Wolverine.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We've got 5 games from Thursday to break down. We've got an 8-game Friday coming up, so
let's get to it.
Michael, let's get to it indeed. We will start off with the monstrous line of the night, and it goes to Barton of the Denver Nuggets. The old fartster dropped 37 points. He had 6 triples, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. He was absolutely on fire with 13 of 19 from the field and 5 of 6 from the free throw line. This comes on the back of back-to-back 9-point performances from the Barton one. Really tough to get a handle on what this guy's going to do on a nightly basis. Like his last 5 games, he goes for 25 points, 20 points, then Paul Millsap is out and Wilson Chandler's out, and he moves to the bench after starting those couple of games with Chandler out, plays 17 minutes and has 9 points, plays 31 minutes and has 9 points, and then takes 19 shots. And I guess you could say that some of the extra shots came from the fact that Nikola Jokic was out for the second half. We'll talk about that later. But Jokic was barely taking any shots in the first half. So it was a weird thing. Mike Malone's not exactly the king of consistency, so it's not like we can bank on 19 shots a game or a 31% usage for Barton in every game, or we can bank on 35 minutes. I think banking on around 30 minutes is a realistic expectation. In his last 5 games, he's gone 37, 36, 17, 31 and 35, but that sort of offensive explosion is obviously huge from Barton. He's also seen his assist numbers dip recently. He was putting up some pretty big numbers in that category earlier on in the season, but over the last couple of weeks, he's seen it dip under 3 per game, and his playmaking numbers have definitely dropped off versus what we saw from him earlier in the season. But he is your monstrous line of the night, and he is, of course, a must-own player. The waiver wire line of the night. I legitimately never thought that I would be doing this for Alec Burks of the Utah Jazz. I thought this guy was cooked. I never thought he'd be able to return to any level of semblance of NBA quality play after his many knee injuries, but this was a fantastic performance from Burke. 28 points for Alec, 4 triples, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 1 block. He was 11 of 17 from the field, and he hit both of his free throws. That is absolutely a tremendous number. And in fact, over the last 2 weeks, Burke is the 115th ranked player, amazingly, in only 24 minutes per game and only shooting 39% in that time. Now, how's his numbers so high? Well, he's averaging 12, 4, and 1.5, but more importantly, 1.3 triples and 1.4 steals, and going to the line 3 times a game and shooting 90% from the line also helps your overall value. Is he worth looking at in 12-team leagues? Well, Rocket Rodney Hood's out. I'd say maybe if you've got a really thin waiver wire, but he's more of a short-term 14-team league guy. But even then, Rocket's not going to be a long-term absence. So when he comes back, his 30 minutes and all his shot attempts, someone's going to lose that time. And a lot of that's going to be Royce O'Neal, who played 20 minutes in this game. But the other 10 of those minutes is probably going to come off Burks' minute load, and then his value is going to drop significantly. So he is putting up good numbers recently, and it's fantastic to see him doing that. But it's not a performance level that I think can necessarily be sustained for Burks as we move forward. But always fantastic to see. The young gun of the night, well, it is Alec Burks' teammate, and it is Don Mitchell. 24 points for Mitchell, including just some ludicrous elevation on some dunks, 5 triples, 6 assists and a steal, 9 of 16 from the field, and hit both his free throws. And after the absolute abomination that was his field goal percentage to begin the season, over the last month, he's shooting 41% and 38% from 3. Still, his true shooting is only at 52%, so a little bit below average, but his numbers his last month's numbers are ridiculous. He's the 52nd ranked player, averaging 18, 4, and 3.5, 1.5 steals and 2.5 threes. And I think that he is a large reason why Ricky Rubio is not going to get back to 30 minutes a game this season. Because Mitchell is running things as the 2 guard, and he's running things as a point guard, and he just looks unbelievable. And again, I said this a few weeks back when David Locke came on this podcast to do the Utah Jazz season preview. He said Don Mitchell is going to average 15 points a game as a rookie. And I went, Dave, all right, that's fine. We know what he can do. Locke was wrong because he's going to average more than that. He's already at 15.3 points per game in just 29 minutes this season. Over the last month, 18 points. His last 3 games, 21 points. He's going to smash 15 points per game. He is for real. I never had that high expectations of him heading into this season, but I was pretty high on him after the draft. And as I said, guys with high steal rates in college, they turn out to be good players a lot of the time, and it is really a solid indicator for looking at players who can be successful NBA talents, and it's really worked out well here for Don Mitchell. Of course, he is an absolute 100% must-own player. If he is on your waiver wire, please go and do something about it. He shouldn't be sitting on anyone's waiver wire at this point. Just been a fantastic, fantastic rookie campaign from Don Mitchell. The dud of the night. I found out today, thanks to Josh, who keeps a track of all the lines of the night, that Jaylen Brown is leading the NBA in duds of the night. Well, he just adds another one to that today with 2 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists with a steal, 1 of 6 shooting. It wasn't good from Jaylen. I think we're all well aware of that. And again, the people that were able to sell Jaylen Brown for Bradley Beal, it's going to be the greatest steal of all time in fantasy. Brownie is the 128th ranked player this season, 150th over the last 2 weeks. He is averaging 15 points and 6 rebounds, and that looks great because they're sexy big numbers. But 59% on 4 attempts from the free throw line is abhorrently bad. He doesn't block shots. He gets 1 assist per game, which is disgusting. And these other numbers are right. Now, he is still 100% a must-own player. No doubt about that. He is a must-own player. But he just doesn't do enough in enough categories to ever be considered an upper echelon top 25 ceiling sort of fantasy player, in my opinion. Now, things could change and he could very well get there, but to me, he just feels like a guy who's going to put up numbers where you go, well, why is he still ranked so low? Because efficiency is going to be an issue, the lack of assists, they're not high steal numbers, no blocks. He just isn't going to be an absolute beast in terms of fantasy, and he has put together, I think that's his 4th Dud of the Night award for the season. It may even be his 5th, because he has just been up and down with some absolute turd bombs. In fact, his last 2 games have been disgusting, but I guess we can attribute some of that to the fact that his best mate did just die, and since returning from that, he had the big game when his mate died, huge performance, and then after that he has struggled pretty significantly since the funeral. The last 2 games, 11 points combined on 16 shots with 5 made field goals, which is not going to cut it. Missed both his free throws in that time as well, and he's 1 of 6 from 3 with only 3 assists. So Jaylen Brown is your dud of the night. Will Barton is your monstrous line of the night. Alec Burks is your waiver wire line of the night. And Don Mitchell is your young gun of the night. I never thought that I'll have those 4 guys in one combination of the lines of the night. It just feels like an odd grouping of players to have there. But hey, that's the way that all the performances went down. We're going to talk about all these 5 games now in a little bit more detail. There is a ton to talk about in these games, and then we'll be back later on in the show to make sure, well, not to make sure, because I'm definitely going to do it. We're going to go through and preview all 8 games for Friday. All right, let's have a look at these games now. The first one of those was the Cleveland Cavaliers. They took on the Atlanta Hawks. We'll start on the Cavs side of things. LeBron was great. Again, 24, 6, and 12. Almost the Richie Beno for LeBron. 3 triples, 2 steals, and 2 blocks on extraordinarily high field goal percentage of 73%. Dwayne Wade, another strong performance. 19, 2, and 3. 4 steals, 2 blocks, and 3 triples. I think at this point you have to consider Dwayne Wade a 12-team league guy. You have to own him, I think. Now, he's not a must-own, and you know my definition between must and should. Must means do everything you can to get him onto your roster. If you've got an expendable player, Wade is a guy that you own. But he's not a guy where you go, who's my worst player? It doesn't matter who it is, I have to drop them to get Wade. He is not that player. But with the news that Iman Shumpert's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks with knee surgery, with Derrick Rose potentially never playing again, with Isaiah Thomas still 3 weeks away, at least it looks like, from returning, Wade's going to have some pretty consistent numbers, and he's been much better since he moved into that reserve role. Kevin Love was strong once more, 25 and 16 with 4 triples. Jay Crowder, one of his better games, 15, 2, and 3, but I'm not buying into that. Still just a deeper league play, while the plumber J.R. Smith, he hit 2 triples in his 35 minutes. Minutes aren't a problem. the production is. He is just a streaming option, and he would have been a fine streamer on a day like this with only 5 games on, but he's not a player that you just hold on to in standard leagues under all circumstances and hope all that stuff comes to fruition. Let's move on to the Atlanta Hawks, because our man, the Baptist, he made the start at center with Lukey Babbitt back and the Undertaker out, but unfortunately, John Collins suffered a shoulder injury. Oh, no! Hopefully, it is okay. We don't have any updates on it as yet. Budenholzer said they're still evaluating the injury. With Dedmon out, with Muscala out, and then with Collins missing at the end, well, that doesn't really count because it was pretty late. Ersan Ilyasova went off 22-3, 4 triples, 4 steals, and a block. And someone asked me today, is Ersan Ilyasova a must-own in 10-team leagues? And I said no. But that doesn't mean that he can't be looked at, and he's not the prime beneficiary from the Baptist going down. Now, there was a stage a few weeks ago that Ilyasova was completely out of the rotation, but with Muscala hurt, with Babbitt hurt, he worked his way back in, and this was one of the best games he's played as a member of the Atlanta Hawks. And while these injuries are still persisting for Muscala, for Dedmon, and potentially Collins, Ilyasova is going to have a solid role. But we've seen him time and time again in a 30-minute role. He's not a player who's going to be a top 40, top 50, top 70 sort of guy. He'll be a player who can have use, but that doesn't make him a 100% must-own sort of a guy. This is strong. He's not going to get 4 steals every game. He's 100% not going to shoot 73% from the field every game. So these numbers are quite inflated. The overall rank for the day is quite inflated, and it's not something we need to get overly, man, look at this. Yeah, let's do it. No, not quite so much. Bellinelli, I like Bellinelli for 12-10 leagues. He's been really, really impressive this year. 18, 4, and 5 in 28 minutes for Marco. Kent Bazemore continues to be shit. 7, 4, and 6. Hey, the 6 assists are nice. The 2 steals are nice. And I still would own him in a 12er, but it's getting dicey. Interestingly, with all the guards healthy, Isaiah Taylor back, Malcolm Delaney out of the rotation. Taylor moved in as the backup point guard. He put up 1 rebound in 15 minutes, so that's not ideal. But he was into that rotation ahead of Delaney, and Delaney was a DMP CD. The other thing I thought was interesting is that with Dedmon out and the Baptist getting hurt and Muscala out, is that Miles Plumlee played only 3.5 minutes. So it's not like it looks like he's going to be getting a significant bump in his playing time with all these injuries. Dennis Schroeder had 27, 2, and 5, and he was pretty good in this game, and he's been rock solid for the majority of this season for the Hawks. The next game, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics. There was no Joel Embiid, and thankfully we didn't get any Ben Simmons free throw bullshit. He played 40 minutes, Simo, 15, 6, and 7 with 5 steals. Actually went 3 of 4 from the line. That's a big, big line from him yet again. While JJ Redick hit 4 triples for 17 points with 5 assists, a steal, and a block. Now with Embiid out, Amir Johnson started. He played 22 minutes. Rashawn Holmes, he played 20. Johnson had 6, 6, and 4 with 3 steals. Holmes had 9 and 7. I cannot stress this enough. There is 0 point in holding on to Rashawn Holmes in 10-team leagues, in 12-team leagues, probably even 14-team leagues. He is a guy that has been a DMP CD in these past few games. And it's not like he was that brilliant in this game where the Sixers came out and said, well, you know what, he's absolutely automatically our backup center now. And even if he is the backup center, it's 16 minutes a night. It's not enough for 12-team leagues. You have to wait for Joel Embiid to get hurt. And you can say that's a guarantee. Nothing's a guarantee. I can 100% assure you, and one of my favorite phrases is that someone is injury prone until they aren't, and someone is an Iron Man until they aren't. There was this tweet I saw the other day about Blake Griffin. We talk about Blake Griffin all the time. There was a stage I think he didn't miss a game for 3 years. Brook Lopez, his first 3 seasons in the NBA, played 82 games. His last 4 seasons, he's missed like 5 games average. But he's still considered injury prone. Like, stuff changes all the time. Maybe Embiid stays healthy. I think Embiid's going to be playing back-to-backs. I think the next back-to-back the Sixers play, he's going to be ready to go for it. I got into a not really a debate, but someone said, they're looking at the Sixers playoff schedule for fantasy over on Reddit, and they said, they've got 17 games, but if you've got Embiid, he's only going to play 13 because 4 of them are back-to-backs. So by the time you get to March, he's either going to be out hurt, which is a possibility, or he's playing those back-to-backs. Like, by March, if he doesn't get hurt, he is playing those back-to-backs. I can 100% assure you of that when we get to fantasy playoffs, if he isn't hurt, he is playing those back-to-backs. So, what does that leave you with Holmesy? Not a lot. Bob Cove, much like Jaylen Brown, has struggled since the death of his cousin. 11 and 5 with 3 triples for him. we've seen this story with Covington before, that the shot doesn't go in at times. He can be streaky, but he still had 3 triples. He still had a steal. He still had 5 rebounds, so he had some value. Well, Dario Saric's efficiency was horrendous. He went 6 of 16 from the field and 3 of 6 from the line, and we had 18 and 10 with 3 triples and 4 assists. So you like those numbers. This was a game without Markel Fultz, without Joel Embiid, without TJ McConnell, and that enabled Saric to play those extra minutes, but he should be owned in 12-team leagues. Onto the Celtics, Kyrie was great. 36, 4 and 3 with 5 triples. Al Horford was great. 21, 8 and 5 with 2 blocks and 2 triples. And Marcus Morris, I give credit where it's due. I don't think Marcus Morris is a good player. I think he's right up there in the shiploak rankings as well. But he played 28 minutes, the most as a Celtic, 17, 5 and 3. And Brad Stevens was singing his praises, saying we need his scoring. He probably could have been a little bit more descriptive and said we need his ISO ball hogging, but he did say we need his scoring. So he's going to have a role. Now, it's not going to be 32 minutes a night or 33 minutes a night like we saw from him in Detroit, and I don't believe that he is a 12-team league guy, but this was a good performance from Marcus Morris. Marcus Smart's hot shooting didn't continue. Still added 8 assists, 1 steal and 1 triple. And that's what bothers me when people talk about Smart. Oh, he's a really good defender, but he's terrible offensively. He is absolutely not terrible offensively. He's a bad shooter, but he's a very, very good passer, and it's something that does get underrated with Marcus Smart's game. Talked about Jalen already. Jason Tatum, only 28 minutes for Tatum, which is a little bit disappointing. Hopefully he's able to get back to 30 minutes in the next one. 15, 2 and 2 with 2 steals and 2 triples. It wasn't like it was a bad night from Tatum, but we got extra minutes from Shemi Ojeleye, from Daniel Tice and Marcus Morris. So I'm not overly worried, but it is something to keep an eye on as we move forward in this season. The next game, the Chicago Bulls and the Denver Nuggets. Robin Lopez, 20 points on 11 shots, 6 boards. He's been getting a lot of minutes lately, and interestingly in this game, Chris Felicio was a DNP CD. When Nikola Mirotic comes back, that is what is going to happen as we, consistently, I think that you'll see Mirotic play that backup 4 role. Bob Portis will play some backup 5. Punch Bob Shiploke, he'll play some backup 5 there as well. And Lopez, I don't think he'll play 34 a night, but he will be getting his consistent numbers, and he is fine to own. Lauri Markkanen, 20 and 9, not many other stats, and that's the sort of concern I had with him as an overall elite fantasy prospect, is that his defensive numbers would be limited. 20 and 9 is good, but you've got to add something else to it, and that is the concern with his overall ceiling. Chrissy Dunn, another strong game, 19, 5 and 5 on 82% shooting. He has definitely improved his game this year. I'm still not 100% sold on him, but he has improved his game, and he is a must-own player. While the Hammer, Denzel Valentine, only scored 5 points, but adds the 7 boards, adds the 5 assists, with a steal, with a block, and a 3. I like those sort of players that aren't 100% reliant on shots falling or getting shots. It's sort of the antithesis of who John Simmons is for the Orlando Magic. Jaren Grant, 8, 6, and 7, which is almost the fat face Ray Felton triple-double there, but he's just a deeper league sort of player. Interestingly, David Nwaba, who was the starter before he twisted his ankle, he was back, he was ready to play, but in true Fred Hoiberg style, if you're a starter, you go immediately to being a DNP CD. That's just the way it works, because we've got to make sure that Paul Zipser gets his 17 minutes. Have to make sure that Antonio Blakeney plays his 13 minutes, and Hoiberg had the most backhanded, it wasn't even a compliment, about Blakeney. They said, why did you get Blakeney to be the guy who goes one-on-one against Zach LaVine? And his quote was, and I paraphrase, I think he's a very good one-on-one player because when he's out in the court, he doesn't even realize that there are other players out there. That's not a compliment. That is not a compliment. Why wouldn't you get Nwaba in there? If you elevated Nwaba to be your starter and you think there's something there, why wouldn't he play a single minute in his return? Just classic Hoiberg bullshit. The Bulls had a pretty big lead in this one, but doing exactly what they needed to do, they gave it up, which is absolutely fantastic in order to get that number 1 pick. Let's hope that... no, let's not hope, because I'm not a Bulls fan anymore. They don't deserve my fandom or support. On to the Nuggets. Nikola Jokic. Oh, no! Yeah, that's how bad it looked. But much like Kristaps Porzingis yesterday, it turns out that Jokic's ankles, they're...
pretty good. It's pretty good.
He twisted his ankle. He stood on Justin Holiday's foot, and it looked shit. He was going to leave the court immediately, not take his free throws. Came back, took the free throws, went out. X-rays negative. Michael Malone said, we're not worried about it. Looks like he's going to be ready to play on Saturday, which amazingly Kristaps Porzingis is as well, which is just astonishing that both of those guys could potentially go through without missing a game. Now, the other interesting thing, I was a bit worried if he was going to miss some time. I didn't know what was going to happen to Ken Farid. because Ken Fareed playing without Jokic is a disaster most of the time. In the second half, though, they didn't start Mason Plumlee. They started Fareed at centre, and they put Barton into the lineup and started Juancho Hernan-Gomez at the 4. And someone asked me today, and because I did tweet this out yesterday or 2 days ago, because people ask, where's your list of nicknames, Josh? So it's on a Google Doc, and if you want that, tweet me, and I will send that link out again. And someone replied to that link and went through, where's one show? Like ONE space SHOW, like a singular show. Who's one show? No, it's one show. One show. Juan Hernan-Gomez is one show. And that made me laugh because maybe it's my accent, maybe I'm speaking too fast, but that made me laugh. But one show, he went to the 4, Fareed at the 5, and Barton started at the 3. But as we saw with the Clippers, the player that comes in and replaces the injured guy isn't necessarily the way they go with the starting lineups. Sammy Decker replaced Blake Griffin when he went hurt, and then the table Montrezl Harrell started today. So in the next game, if Jokic does happen to miss, we might see Mason Plumlee start at the 5, and that would, I think that would lead to Fareed actually going to the bench, and they might start Juancho at the 4, or they might throw Trey Lyles in there. Now, Fareed was good for all the criticism I give him. Again, it's a night where the guys that I've criticised had some big games with Barton, with Marcus Morris and Fareed. He had 14 and 13 in 22 minutes. Really, really productive. I don't think that he is a must-own 12-team league guy because, again, in a game without Jokic, he played just 22 minutes. And Lyles got his 20 minutes. Hernan-Gomez played 23 minutes. Dick Jefferson played 12 minutes. Plumlee played 20 minutes. It's not like Fareed's going out there and playing 35 a night. He's definitely a streaming option and would have been a good streaming option for this night, but it doesn't make him an absolute must-own guy. But their starting lineup would be really interesting if both Baby Neck Wilson-Chandler and Nikola Jokic are out. Gaz Harris was great.
Nice, Gary!
21 and then a lot of threes. 3 triples, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. Another strong game from Gaz. He's been really, really impressive of late. Well, the Blue Arrow, he is shooting 25% from 3. Jamal Murray, 17% over his last 7 games, and he was 1 of 9 from the field here for 5, 4, and 1. He is still a top 150 player despite all the shooting struggles, and I still do believe in him. He played 31 minutes. Manny Moutier has cooled off. He only shot 2 of 9, Moutier, and played 17 minutes, but I would still hold Jamal Murray, but maybe I'm just a little bit of a sucker for punishment. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Portland Trailblazers, well, Jason Kidd, he did it again. He won the game, so I can't be too critical, but you know what? I'm going to be critical. Under no circumstance should Jason Terry be coming into a game ahead of Malcolm Brogdon. This was a game without Matthew Dellavedova, and Brogdon played 22 minutes. Terry played 18 minutes but Jason, it's not even December. Why are you playing your vets and it's not December? Why are we... Crazy. Gary Payton goes from starter to not playing at all. He played 53 seconds of junk time. DeAndre Liggins played 21 minutes and Brogdon played 22. It feels a complete misallocation of resources, but that's pretty much the title of Jason Kidd's coaching memoirs. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. None. It's getting real tough to hold on to Brogo. It depends on who was around. If Chrissy Dunn was on the wire, I would make that move. I'd snap my fingers and do it straight away. If I was debating between getting Barton and Brogdon, I'd probably grab Barton. If it was Ken Fareed, I'd probably stick with Brogo. It really depends on who was around. If it was Jason Terry, I don't think I'd bother with that. But 18 minutes for Jason Terry at the age of 7,000 is probably not your optimal NBA lineup. And they won here. That was great. But most of it was because the Blazers just couldn't shoot anything. They were 42% from the field and 26% from 3. So that's a large portion of that. But the coaching decisions of Jason Kidd continue to be confoundingly dumb. The Muppet John Henson, 13 and 10 with a steal and a block. He is a must-own guy. He's owned in 35% of leagues and Brogdon's owned in 72. I would own Henson over Brogo with the way things are going. Eric Bledsoe, impressive again, 25, 1 and 4. Middleton, 26, 7 and 4 with 4 triples. He is really, really good, Chrissy Middleton. He's one of my favourite players, and he is not getting impacted by Bledsoe. Well, Yanni had 29 and 5, 3 steals, 3 blocks. Not very efficient, which is a shame for him, but otherwise some big, big numbers from Mr. Antetokounmpo. Tone Snell was shit as usual, 2 points in 28 minutes. On to the Blazers. Yusuf Nurkic, Hopefully you held. Hopefully you bought low. He is coming back into form now. 25 and 11 with 3 steals and a block, while Lillard had 18, 7 and 7, and McCollum had 15, 6 and 5 on some pretty poor shooting for CJ. Pat Connaughton made another start, but only 16 minutes in this one for Pat. 4 and 3, not really a 12-team league guy, but a streaming type of option. Mo Harkless, only 6 minutes. He has been an absolute atrocity this season. We saw more of the Shabazz Napier lineups grouped with Lillard and McCollum, but Evan Turner got a bump in minutes. 27 minutes, 8 and 7, but not much to see there. Now, Al-Farouq Aminu returned. He played 22 minutes off the bench, 6 and 5. And once again, I got the question yesterday, yesterday before this game, Josh, I need to drop someone to activate Aminu out of my IR. Like, that's just not what you do. No, I can't stress this enough. Someone like Al-Farouq Aminu is not someone that you make a preemptive drop out of your team so you can activate him and so he can give you 6 and 5. You just don't make that move. You just wait. And you wait it out and you see what happens, because I don't believe that Aminu is going to be a top 100 player. He was good to start the season, rebounded at a very, very high rate. But Noel Vonleh's back now. He wasn't there then. You can say whatever you want about Vonleh, but he fits well next to Nurkic. Nurkic's form has increased, and he's played much, much better since Vonleh has been back. And Vonleh is a very, very strong rebounder. He played 23 minutes here. Aminu played 22. And I don't think Al-Farouq's going to be able to get back to the 30 minutes a night that he was playing before he went down. So I don't think that he is 100% a must-own, must-activate type of standard league player. The last game of the night, the Utah Jazz and the LA Clippers. I spoke about Burksy, spoke about Mitchell. Ravishing Rick Rubio, only 27 minutes. And this is where the concern lies with Rubio, because 15, 3 and 6 with 2 threes and 2 steals is very, very good. 56% shooting, awesome. Like, we love that. But in a game where Rodney Hood's out, where Joe Johnson is out, Rubio playing just 27 minutes, and the team looking better with Burks and Mitchell as the backcourt combination is a real concern for him. Now, he's not a guy you drop, but if we think he's going to get back to top 30 value, I don't hold that belief. The assist numbers are way down, the minutes aren't there, and it's not working for him at the moment. Derek Favors, only 28 minutes, but 12 and 12 with 4 assists. He will drop when Rudy Gobert comes back. And a lot of people are asking, what's his outlook going to be when Gobert comes back? And I'd just say, have a look at what he did before Gobert went down. And that should give you some indication, when literally he was not an ownable player at that point in 12-team leagues. Now, I think that Quinn Snyder will be able to tweak the rotation, and hopefully that would mean move Ekpe Udoh into a much lower role and play Favors primarily as the backup center, and bring Jonas Jerebko back into the rotation and maybe excise Udoh completely. And if Favors plays that backup center role, it helps his field goal percentage, it helps his rebounds, it helps his block numbers, which makes him close to a top 100 player. But if he goes back to the same rotation as before and he's playing almost exclusively as a power forward, it is going to be hard to see Favors retain value in a 12-team league. But of course, you don't make any drop there. As for Jerebko, 14, 2 and 3, he is a very, very good player in my opinion. Not an awesome fantasy guy, but in 18-team leagues, 16-team leagues, he does have some value. Well, if Joe Ingles is on your waiver wire, and he is in leagues, trust me, add him. 12 points, 6 assists, and 3 triples for Jinglin Joe. Onto the Clippers, Austin Rivers is also a must-own now. 25 points with 6 assists and 3 triples. He is just going to accumulate stats by bludgeoning the box score. He's not going to do it efficiently, although he was very good in this one. That's not going to be a hallmark of his game, but he's just going to have to do so much, as is Lou Williams, who had 22 and 5 with a steal and a block. They did start the table, Montrezl Harrell at power forward. He played 21 minutes and had 13, 3 and 3, and that's nice on 5 of 5 shooting. If you're in a 16-team league, Harrell's worth a look. Sammy Decker, he played 20 minutes and had 7 and 1. Now, I said this the other day, is that I think that Decker needs 28 minutes to become a 12-team league guy, and Harrell needs fewer minutes than that. But if they're going to split minutes and play 21, 20 minutes apiece, then they're both going to be deeper league sort of guys. Too many minutes for guys like CJ Williams and Sindarius Thornwell, when that could be going other areas. Or DeAndre Jordan grabbed 16 boards in his 31 minutes. That does it for all of the action from Thursday's NBA games. I'm going to take a quick break now, and then we're going to just reset ourselves and get ready to talk from a DFS mindset about all of the games that we've got coming up on Friday. There are 8 of them, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to play a song by Jake McKelvey and the Countertops to transition us, and the song is called Where Does the Time Go, Marissa? So Jake, take it away.
Are you still walking so softly after all of this time? And whose heart could your heart be if in your heart isn't mine? How do you jumble my head up while you are laying so still? It's not that I don't want you hunting, it's just I don't want you to kill me when I mention this gently, though I'm sure you will when I do.
Alright guys, we're back. Let's talk perfect DFS from Thursday's games on FanDuel. Austin Rivers 35, ravishing Rick Rubio 30.6, Barton at 49.9, and Alec Burks at 53.9. LeBron James 58.2.
LeBron James.
Giannis Antetokounmpo 56.3, Amir Johnson 27.2, Ersan Ilyasova 42.6, and Yusuf Nurkic at 45.7 for a total of 399.4, and that costs 59,700 over on DraftKings. Dwayne Wade 38.5, Barton 51.5, LeBron 59, Ilyasova 39.25, Nurkic 46.75, Burks at 53.25, Chrissy Middleton at 43.25, and Gaz Harris at 39.25 for a total of 371.25 points. And that cost $49,900 dues. All right, let's talk DFS for Friday. We've got 8 games on. The first one of those games is the Detroit Pistons and the Washington Wizards. No John Wall for the Wizards, while the tackle box, Johnny Lua, is doubtful. That's not a DFS impact sort of situation. Anyway, let's talk the point guards here. And I think we've got to be really cautious about Timmy Frazier, who has been consistently outplayed by Tomas Satoransky. Frazier's down to $4,000, and if you want to put him into a GPP, sure, but I wouldn't feel strongly about it. Satoransky, on the other hand, is up to $4,600 over on FanDuel, and that's fair enough given how he's played. But at that sort of salary, he's going to need to see 28 to 30 minutes a night for him to repay that number, and that makes him definitely not a cash play, but does have some sort of tournament upside there. Reggie Jackson for the Pistons, 5,900. He's been pretty consistent recently in terms of the numbers he's been putting up, and I think at 5,900, he's not really a high upside player, but for cash, he's not a bad option to take a look at, whereas Ish Smith at 41 has been averaging 24 a game over the last 3, which is good at 4,100. I just don't really feel like there's much consistency or upside there. At shooting guard, Brad Beal is fine after that face issue, $8,000 for Beal. He's got a pretty good record against Detroit. He's got an opportunity for big usage. Could rack up some assists. Probably don't feel good about him as a cash guy, but I don't think it's abnormal to play him though. I like him for tournaments, while Avery Bradley at 5,500 just cannot get anywhere near the numbers he was getting in Boston last season. So he's at 5,500, but I think for cash, that's not a bad situation to look at him. Luki Kennard had he had a bloody good game in the last one for the Pistons, but that was against the Suns. 27 points for Kennard at 3,700 in a GPP, sure, but I don't feel good about it. At small forward, Stan Johnson, he's lowly priced, but he's lowly priced for a reason. While Otto Porter at 7,000, increased usage for Otto with John Wall out. I think at 7,000, he is a pretty good cash guy to take a look at. While Kelly Oubre at 5,000, he's outplaying Markieff Morris. He's pushing Morris to a bench role. He's limiting what Machin Gortat can do. At $5,000, given he's averaging 27 over his last 5 and 33 over his last 3, I think 5,000 for Oubre is a really good price. I'd be happy utilizing him. I wouldn't want to use Markieff, but Toby Harris at 6,600, much like Reggie Jackson, it just feels like a cash play. Not sure there's that much tournament upside, but I think you're going to be getting 30, 32 out of Toby, with a decent level of confidence. At centre, Gortat's down to 4,600. He's been shithouse lately. He's been shithouse. He's been shitful. He's been whatever you want to describe. But he can come in and have those weird big rebounding games, and that's a pretty cheap price where he could come out and drop 30 or 35, and that makes him a GPP guy. But he wouldn't be in my first choice lineup where Andre Drummond's just murdering people. He's at 8,800, and I think a 45-point game is a distinct possibility for Drummo. The other guy who's been playing pretty well lately is Jan Mahinmi, but he's been playing well, but it's not translating into big DFS points. He had 19 and 17 in his last 2 games, and at 3,600, that's all right, but it's pretty much where he needs to be, and that's not the sort of impact you want from your tournament sort of guy who's going to win it all for you. Over on DraftKings, for tournaments, I like Satoransky at 3,800, and for cash, it's Oubre at 48, Toby Harris at 63, Otto Porter at 65, I do really like a lot, and Drummo at 8,800. You can still have a look at Beal as well at 7,900. I'm not feeling 100% confident with him over on DraftKings at that increased price. Let's move on to the next one. We have got the Golden State Warriors and the Orlando Magic. And I sat down to look at this game earlier on today, and the Warriors had 5 guys questionable. And you know that over on Basketball Monster, we create these what-if scenarios, so you can have a look with the questionable players. What happens if this player is in? What happens if this player is out? And I was looking down the barrel of creating 32 different scenarios for the Golden State Warriors for Friday, with all the different permutations available when there's 5 guys who are questionable. Thankfully, the Warriors updated the injury status so that Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Andre Iguodala, and David West, who were all listed as questionable, got upgraded to probable. The only player who is left as being questionable is Klay Thompson. So I only had to create 1 additional what-if scenario for Klay. Now, if Klay misses, I imagine that Pat McCaw would likely get the start, and it would be him and Uncle P, Nick Young, who would take on pretty much all of his minutes. Now, McCaw, we saw when he started for Steph the other day, he played 30-plus minutes and was really good. I'm not sure that replacing Klay, he would be as effective, or that he would get that many minutes, considering that 3-point shooting role could very easily be filled by Nick Young, and he would be a GPP type option if Klay happens to be out. Now, this is a matchup against the Magic. We know Terry Ross has got a pretty significant knee injury, so he is out indefinitely, and Aaron Aflalo is going to be taking on the majority of those minutes from Terry Ross's absence. So shout out to Aflalo, who's going to be putting up 19-minute games with 1 rebound. At point guard, Steph is 9,700. He has got a history of absolutely illuminating the Magic. The problem here is that Curry's got that busted right ring finger, and it's affecting a few things. It's affecting his dribble, it's affecting his shot, and this is not an easy fix situation. So I'm a little bit hesitant about using Steph in what is a brilliantly perfect matchup. He's got a great record. He torches this team routinely. But that finger just gives me a level of pause, and that makes him a GPP sort of a guy. Lord Alfred Payton at 7,200 is really, really rounding into form, but he has a streaky consistency, and against the Warriors, it's not an ideal spot to use him. DJ Augustine or Shawnee Livingston, not for me. At shooting guard, Fournier is at 5,400. His numbers have been okay, but nothing for me to really write home about, so I'll pass. Clay's at 6,900. Probably a little bit too high for Clay, especially with everyone else being ruled almost ready to go. As for Aflalo, 4,000, no way. Nick Young at 3,500. I really do like that for tournaments, of course, if Clay happens to be out. At small forward, John Simmons is at 5,100. Now, I've talked about the perils of John Simmons and what his standard league value is. He's at 5,100. He put up 7 points in 33 minutes in the last game. I don't feel strongly about Simmons. He requires usage and he requires the shots to go in. If that doesn't happen, he provides you jack shit. So at 5,100, he could easily drop 30 or he could drop 12. So to me, he is a GPP sort of an option. Durant at 10-1, I do really like you. I feel like you're getting 50 out of Durant against the Magic is not. It's not going to be a tough situation. Maybe John Simmons can provide some sort of defense, but I'm pretty confident in KD putting up some numbers. While Iguodala at 3,800, nah. At power forward, Big Az Gordon, 7,900, just the odd 78 from Azza in the last game, but I think expecting another 78-point performance is foolish against the Warriors, so he'd be a tournament guy, but I wouldn't want to use that $8,000 or 7,900, in cash. Draymond at 8,100, pretty similar. I would use him in a tournament, but I don't feel strongly. I'd much rather actually use Aaron Gordon than Draymond Green and save myself $200. At center, Nick Vucevic, 7,900. Centers against the Warriors is almost definitely a no, so I think we'll pass there. The other centers, Mo Spates, Zaza Pachulia, Bismack Biyombo. It's going to have to be a no for me for all those guys. Are those Spates with John Isaac out and with Aaron Aflalo taking a lot of Terry Ross's minutes, maybe Spates could push up to 18 minutes and hit some threes and get 25 points. That is a legitimate possibility. So consider Spates. He is a guy that can light it up, and he is perfectly positioned with the Ross and with the John Isaac absences for him to maybe have one of those weird blow up type of performances where I go, shit, Mo Spates, huh? Yeah, Mo Spates. Over on DraftKings for tournaments, Geordie Bell at 3,200. It is definitely an upside sort of a situation, maybe if Clay is out, but you wouldn't feel strongly about using Geordie Bell. John Simmons at 5,100 for tournaments. Lord Alfred at 61. That is a very, very good price for Peyton. I'm still not ready to lock him in on DraftKings, but I'd feel much better on cash with Peyton on DraftKings and FanDuel. Draymond's at 7,400 and Steph at 9,900, whereas I just absolutely love Kevin Durant for cash at 9,600. As Gordon's at 76 and Vucevic at 72, much like on FanDuel, they would be tournament type of guys over on DraftKings. The next game, we have got the Indiana Pacers and the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are favoured by 6.5 and the total is 215.5. Bebe Nogueira is questionable with a calf issue, but the bigger issue is Miles Turner, who is dealing with a sore right knee. Now, if Miles Turner is out, Domantas Sabonis will start, Al Jefferson will move into a backup role, and Sabonis becomes a guy that you almost have to lock in cash, but we hopefully will get that update before shoot-around. And generally, the Pacers are pretty good at releasing timely information. At point guard, if you want to get your revenge games out there, Corey Joseph at 3,600. He is averaging 12 points over his last 5, so he's going to need a pretty significant boost to get that value. I won't be putting too much stock in that. Freddie VanVleet at 3,700. He's doing all right, averaging 25 over his last 3. That is some tournament upside. That's talking about over 6x value, but I don't really think there's much value to go above that. While Kyle Lowry is crushing it, but we'll try again. Therefore, his price is also rising, 8,500 for Lowry, which makes him a little bit tough to use. Daz Collison struggling, 5,600. I don't mind Daz at 56. That's a big price drop, and I think there is some tournament value there. At shooting guard, we've got DeMar DeRozan at 7,800. That's a big price jump, but it's still not as high as he's been as early as a couple of weeks ago. I like him a lot there, while Vic Oladipo is at 8,600. I know Victor's been killing it, but that is very, very high, and I would not want to use that in cash. That, to me, is definitely just a tournament sort of a play. Norm Powell, no way. At small forward, Bojan Bogdanovic at 4,500, but you want to go full revenge game? How about CJ Miles at 3,500? We know that he can go out there and hit a bunch of threes, and drop you 30 points based on 7-8 triples. He can do that, but he's definitely not a cash play. The Jedi, OG Anunoby, he is starting, but he's putting up no fantasy points, so nothing to see there. While Lance Stevenson is now at 5,200. He's putting up some okay numbers, but I'm not sure the upside is high enough, and I'm not sure the floor is safe enough to consider in really either format. Serge Ibaka, I think you're just asking for trouble playing Serge, even though he's at 4,900. You got Siakam at 5,100. What a world where Pascal Siakam is priced higher than Serge Ibaka on DFS sites. I wouldn't be using Pascal, while Sabonis at 5,900. Look, if we get confirmation that Turner is out, then Sabonis in cash is good. Otherwise, he'd just be a player that I'd throw into one of many tournament lineups and hope that Turner gets ruled out. Then that lineup has a significant chance of success. Thaddeus Young at 5,800 would also fall into that category because he wouldn't have Sabonis really coming for his backup minutes. He'd only have Bojan Bogdanovic or TJ Leaf playing some of those backup minutes behind him. At centre, Valanciunas at 4,500. We've seen many centres put up big numbers against the Pacers. It's not a matter of talent, though, for Valanciunas. It's a matter of Dwayne Casey removing head from anus. Whether that happens or not, I got no idea. In the last game, he put up 19 points in 22 minutes, and that's not quite enough, but if he got to 26 minutes, which feels like an absolute pipe dream, then he could smash that value. So I think he's worth a GPP look, mainly specific for this matchup. As for Turner, $7,000. Well, if you're going to throw Sabonis into a GPP, why don't you put Turner into another one? Because people will hedge off him as well, and that might give you an advantage if he happens to play. If we find out before lock that Turner is right to go, I still think that he's probably just a tournament option and not a cash game player. Over on DraftKings, for the tournaments, it is CJ Miles at 3,900, Siakam's at 41. Much prefer that price than the 51 he is on FanDuel. Bogdanovic at 46, Sabonis at 53, and Miles Turner at 63. Really good prices for both those big men. For cash, I like Lowry at 81. I like Oladipo at 8,000. A much better price on DraftKings for Vic, and DeMar DeRozan at 7,900. Some pretty strong high floor players in this game between the Raptors and the Pacers. The next game up on the deck is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Some decent games from these teams already. I think the Timberwolves have won both of them, including that Andrew Wiggins banked-in three-point buzzer-beater game winner. The Thunder are favoured by 5 here, and the total is 211. The whisper is that Jeff Teague will be back. I don't know if that's accurate, but it is the whisper. And if Jeff T comes back, there's so many people say things, and I feel they say it from hope. Oh, when Teague's back, you think that that Tyus Jones is going to start playing 24 minutes a night? No, I don't. I can understand why you would want that to happen, and I understand how he fits. But it's not about what we see as being common sense. It's about what does Tom Thibodeau do, because so many of his things don't make sense. And I can see Teague, look, for the first game back, Teague might come back and play 24 minutes just because he's nursing the Achilles. But once we find that he's fine, it's going to be nose to the grindstone 36 minutes a night for Teague. As much as we think that Tyus Jones is a better fit for this starting five, I don't think Tom Thibodeau is going to agree with that. Remember, he is the one that traded away Ricky Rubio and has skewed more better-fitting point guards like, say, a George Hill, even though he's been shitful this season, and to sign Jeff Teague. In saying all that, if Teague is out, then we go really hard after Tyus Jones, but he is up to 5,700. But I don't really give a shit. I feel like he's almost 40 points guaranteed at this point. Russ at 11,300, in completely, averaging 62 over his last 5. Totally in on Russ there, while Teague at 67. I wouldn't really pay too much attention to Jeff if he does happen to return. Shooting guards, Robertson, 43. Nah. Wigo, 6,400. I really like this price for Andrew Wiggins. He's still an inconsistent guy that I lean a little bit more towards tournaments, but at the moment, I feel alright about that for cash. I don't think it's a horrendous move. Terry Ferguson at 35. He's playing, doing nothing, but he's playing, and Jamal Crawford at 3,500. At small forward, Jim Butler, 8,100. Teague in, Butler no. Teague out, Butler for tournaments, yes. And then you got Paulie George at 8,500, who's averaging 48 the last 3 times against the Wolves. I feel like he's a 40-point guy here, and that does give him 50-point upside, so I like him more as a tournament player rather than a cash guy. If Nemanja Bjelica is out, he is still questionable, then more of these minutes are going to go towards Taj Gibson, and it might give us an opportunity to get some more out of Gorgie Dieng. Let's talk power forwards now, though. Jeremy Grant's at 36, and I don't really care, while Taj Gibson's at 5,500. Much like Courtney Lee in New York, Taj Gibson at 5,500 is just money. It's just bank it, lock it in, get your 28 with 38 point upside, 40 point upside if Bjelica happens to be out. As for Gorgie Dieng, he had 44 in the last game at 4,100. If we hear that Bjelica is out, or he's still questionable when things lock, Dieng into a GPP is not a horrendous move, but remember, it required Bjelica being out and Towns getting into a lot of foul trouble for Dieng to play those 36 minutes. It's not going to be a regular occurrence if Towns is getting his full minute load. Mallow is at 7,500, and I just feel that's probably a little bit too high, especially considering they bumped him by $1,300. I have no idea why. Karl Anthony Towns, 8,900. I like him here. I think there's tournament upside. I think there's cash value as well. While Stevie Adams at 64, probably just a little bit too high for Adams at 6,400. Over on DraftKings for tournaments, you got Wigo at 67 and Adams at 58. A much better price for Adams on DraftKings. And for cash, you got Taj at 57, Jim Butler at 73, Townsy's at 86, and Westbrook is 11,400. The good news for Westbrook is that X-ray that he had on his hand was fine. He is ready to go. There's no concerns about him at all. Thankfully, Tyus Jones is an absolute smash on DraftKings if Teague is out. In cash, he will be like 80% owned, I would guess, if Teague is ruled out before tip, because he is at $4,700. Very, very cheap. The Sacramento Kings and the Chicago Bulls. The Kings favored by 1.5. Wow. The total is 193 points, an extraordinarily low total from two of the worst offenses the two worst offenses in the NBA. Injury-wise, I think we're all good in terms of questionable players. Nwaba is apparently back, but doesn't look like he's going to be in the rotation at the moment. And as per usual, trying to find a cash play for the Kings is almost an impossibility. At point guard, De'Aaron Fox is at 47. He has been fairly poor lately. It's as good a matchup as any, so if you want to throw him into a GPP, the Bulls do allow point guards in general to put up some pretty good numbers. While Frankie Mason, maybe he's the point guard you want. 3,800 for Frank. He's been putting up some alright numbers, averaging 20 across his last 5 in just 21 minutes. That's almost a point per minute for those of you who can do that sort of math. 3,800 is a decent price. Great matchup, GPP sort of a guy. Chrissy Dunn, 6,700. Another big game from Dunny today. The Fox-Hill combination hasn't necessarily been destroying other teams. They haven't been an easy pass for point guards, but they haven't been destroying them. Dunn is a GPP type of guy here, and I don't really think there's much to see with Jaren Grant. Georgie Hill, of course, the other one, 4,700. Just putrid from George, but it's the Bulls. Who knows what can happen? Tournament, if you're going to do anything. Garrett Temple, no. Budrick Hield, 4,400. I just don't really feel that excited about him. Bogdan and Justin Holiday. Well, Justin Holiday at 5,800 I think is a really good option, especially for tournaments, but I'd feel all right about him in cash. At small forward, the hammer, Denzel Valentine, 6,300. He can get it done even without scoring, as we saw in today's game. I think against this team, he's a fairly strong option. Nwaba, I can't really see us getting too interested in him there. At power forward, Lauri Markkanen, 6,800. A really good matchup for him. A strong performance against the Nuggets for Lauri. I think that's worth a look, especially without Nikola Mirotic being back. While Punch Bob Shitbloke at 4,400. It's unlikely to be a blowout, so he's not going to get the opportunity to jack shots like a crazy person. Zach Randolph at 5,300. Sorry. The minutes have been trending down for Zebo. I just can't. Tournament, sure, he could have a 35-pointer. No worries, but there's no trust in any of these guys for the Kings. Not even Willie Cauley-Stein, who'd been playing well, and then played 24 minutes and had 19 points in the last game. He's at 6,300, and you can't afford those sort of turds at that sort of price. So he is a tournament sort of a player to me. While Rob Lopez has been putting up the strong numbers, he's at 5,300. I don't hate that for cash. I think that's actually pretty bloody good to use Robin Lopez for cash at that sort of a price. And Chris Felicio, as I mentioned, is out of the rotation now. Apparently, we'll see how long that lasts, but I do think it will be permanent. For tournaments on DraftKings, Frankie Mason, 37, Zachy Randolph, 52, Georgie Hill, 42, Justin Holiday, 5,800. And for cash, I like Markkanen at 6,000. I like Chrissy Dunn at 62. I like the Hammer at 57. I like Willie Cauley-Stein a lot. Now, that I would actually use him in cash at 5,400. It would probably bite me in the ass, but I would be happy with that at 5,400, while Rob Lopez at 51 feels like the Taj Gibson of the centre market, where you can just lock that in and get yourself the 25 points, especially given the current form that he is in, or that he showed today against Denver. Anyway, the next game is the San Antonio Spurs facing off once again against the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have got a few guys on the injury report. Brandon Wright is questionable. Mario Chalmers is questionable. Chandler Parsons is questionable. There's going to be lots of lineup decision choices for JB Bickerstaff. We saw in the last game that Tyreek Evans made the start, as did Benny McLemore. But of course, if Parsons is back, then McLemore likely pushes back to the bench. Does Tyreek remain starting over Chalmers? I tend to think that he will. I'm not 100% sure that will be the case, though. Regardless, his minutes will be pretty similar either way. At point guard, you've got Tone Parker back, but that's doing nothing apart from eliminate DeJounte Murray out of the lineup, while Pat Mills at 4,600. I think the Pat Mills at 4,600 is worth a GPP shout, but that's probably about it. At shooting guard, Tyreek's at 6,900. I think just a little bit too high. I think a 6,000 for Tyreek would be good. 6,900 is probably just a smidgen too high. Dan Green, no. I don't hate Benny McLemore, though. And he hasn't been good. We know that. But at 3,600... I do think that he has some upside, especially if Chalmers and Parsons are out. There's 26, 27 point upside there for McLemore, and that's sort of what you're looking for in those tournaments. At small forward, Dylan Brooks, 4,100, just really struggling to get anywhere near that of late. Chandler Parsons at 44, I don't feel confident there, but I do feel confident in Kyle Anderson. Yes, he's at 5,800, but he's, again, Courtney Lee, Taj Gibson, Rob Lopez. 5,800 for Kyle Anderson. I feel like it's just going to happen every game, whether it comes from rebounds, from scoring, from assists, from steals. He'll find a way to get to that level. Rudy Gay at 4,800? No. Jumpin' Jim Ennis. He, in the last game, dropped 26 points at 3,700. If we find Chandler Parsons is out, Ennis is not a bad GPP type of a target, but only in that circumstance. At power forward, JaMychal Green, 5,500. The minutes are there. He just doesn't produce. That's who he is, and I don't really like too much about him. Well, LaMarcus Aldridge, and I just want to give a quick mention to LaMarcus Aldridge. This person's probably listening. They sent me a message saying, I think your evaluation of LaMarcus Aldridge is wrong. You really need to dive deeper into the Spurs to understand what their culture's like, and Pop has an open door, and Aldridge came and complained, so Pop changed everything, and when Kawhi comes back, it probably won't have too much of an impact on Aldridge. It'll just reduce his points per game. Now, number one, Aldridge's number one category is points per game. Number two, his number two category is field goal percentage. You lose shots, you lose value in both of those categories significantly. So it is going to drop his fantasy value quite a bit. So I was saying yesterday to consider him a real strong sell high guy, because he's not going to be able to maintain that usage, the level of shots, and the efficiency might stay the same, but when you lose attempts, if you're a high efficiency player, your value in that category drops because of volume. So Aldridge will lose some volume there. But then the kicker, and people love throwing this insult out there, it happens all the time. Mate, you don't even watch the NBA. You mustn't watch. You make me think that you don't watch any NBA if you think that LaMarcus Aldridge is a shit teammate. Huh? Oh, because the ball that they've focused the offense on him and the players look happy on the court. Now, again, apologies to this person if you're listening again, but LaMarcus Aldridge is a shit teammate. He's a shit teammate. He left Portland because he is a shit teammate. Ask anyone who is a Portland fan whether he was a shit bloke or not. Massive shit bloke. The reason that he left Portland is because he wanted to be the man. He wanted to be the number one guy, but he didn't want to do any media, any PR stuff. And so when the Blazers got Damian Lillard and Lillard started doing that stuff, he cracked the shits. I'm the number one guy here. Why is Lillard doing this stuff? Well, you don't want to, LaMarcus. Oh, that doesn't matter. If I can't do it, no one does it. That's why he left, because Lillard was becoming a star. Because he didn't want to deal with Lillard becoming a star. He went to San Antonio last year, wasn't the number one option, cracked the shits, lost his mind, bitched, moaned, complained. Not a good teammate. This season, he is the number one option. Kawhi is out. So all past history of LaMarcus Aldridge makes me think that if he comes back and Leonard goes back to being the number one option, which he 100% should, and Aldridge goes back into the role that he was in last year, he's going to piss and moan and bitch about it. And, again, be a shit teammate. This is what he is. This is what he's proven over the course of his NBA career. I don't care if the players look happy because the ball's moving around the court. That's not Aldridge, that's the Spurs. That's what the Spurs do. So, I love the criticism. You don't watch the NBA because you think Aldridge is a teammate. No, I watch the NBA. I read about the NBA. My day is 20 hours of NBA a day. I know these things that go on. I know that LaMarcus Aldridge is a shit teammate and has been a shit teammate in the past. And it's got nothing to do... And the fact that I don't watch the NBA because I think he's a shit teammate, but the reason he's not a shit teammate is because Pop had to change the entire scheme to stroke his ego. Doesn't make me think he's less of a shit teammate. If you've got to say, oh, Greg, I know you're the greatest coach of all time. Can I touch the ball a bit more? Sure, LaMarcus. No worries, mate. There you go. What a great bloke you are. Oh, thanks, Greggy. Look, that's not a good teammate. A good teammate would be like, Kawhi's better than me. I know my role. Not like, oh, do you mind if I just touch the ball a bit? Because make me feel happier. Oh, you're the best, LaMarcus. Thanks, man. Anyway, the centers. Marc Gasol, 8,700. Too expensive for me. Not Aldridge. I got him on the brain. Gasol has been struggling a little bit with his form of late. I think that's just too much of a load placed on him at the moment. Powell is at $6,000, probably a little bit too high for Gasol. Or Brandon Wright or Jonte Davis, whoever is the backup center. I don't think there's much for us to see about those guys. Sorry about that LaMarcus Aldridge rant. We probably went for a bit too long, and I apologize for the person who sent me that message. I encourage all messages, but one thing I absolutely despise is when you tell me you don't watch basketball, mate. You don't watch any of the games. Like, that shits me to tears. I watch more. I can 100% guarantee you that I watch more basketball than you. Because it's literally what I do. I sit at home and I watch the NBA every single day. So send me that criticism. You don't watch the games, mate. You don't even watch any NBA. That bothers me a lot. Happy to take any sort of criticism and engage in discussions, but that's bullshit. DraftKings, tournaments. Benny McLemore, 3,500. Cash, Kyle Anderson, 55. Tyreek's at 68. LaMarcus is at 85. Strong option for LaMarcus there. And Marc Gasol at 7,800. That big price drop there makes me look at Marc Gasol and go, yeah, you know what? On DraftKings, I'll be happy using him on DraftKings. On FanDuel, not so much. The next game, the Charlotte Hornets and the and the Miami Heat. Chandler Parsons, I've got Memphis on the brain here. Kemba Walker has been upgraded from doubtful to questionable, but Jeremy Lamb has been added to the injury report as questionable. Now, there's a few different machinations here. If Walker is out and Lamb plays, it really does help Jez Lamb because they need his scoring punch a lot. If Walker is in and Lamb is out, then I think you get more of a boost for a guy like Malik Monk, or maybe even the Baconator Dwayne Bacon taking some of those minutes. But that's not really going to be too much of a DFS option. But if Kemba's out and Lamb is in, I like Jez quite a lot for GPPs, and probably even for cash. At point guard, the Back-to-back dud of the night winner, the Iron Shoulder, Goran Dragic. He's at 6,200. You couldn't have had two shitter games in a row. This is an absolutely brilliant matchup for him, but I've been a little bit scared off from using him in cash, so I'd have to say he is a tournament type of guy, but the upside is there clearly. As for Walker, 7,200. Coming off the shoulder injury, could impact his shooting. The Heat have been pretty good defensively. They could throw Joshie Richardson onto him, which is going to be a problem, so I'm not really keen on Kemba at 7,200. Tyler Johnson at 46, probably a little bit too high for his fluctuating form. If Walker is out, Michael Carter-Williams will start, but he is priced at 5,400, and that's too expensive. At shooting guard, Nick Batum at 56. I love Batum if Lamb is out and if Walker out. If they're both out, Batum at 56 is almost going to be an absolute lock-in. Now, he has struggled a bit since returning from the second elbow injury, but at 5,600 with those other absences, he would be a really good guy to look at. Dion Waiters at 6,100. I don't know. Jez Lamb is at 6,500. If Walker's out, that's cash to me. If he is in, it is tough to use Lamb at that sort of a price. At small forward, Joshie Richardson's at 45, been playing much better lately. He is a tournament sort of guy only. While Kid Gilchrist at 49. If Lamb and Walker are out, I wouldn't hesitate to throw Kid Gilchrist into a GPP, but that's about it. At power forward, we've got Jim Johnson at 56. Always tournaments at this point, given the way that things are happening in Miami. Marvin Williams at 4,500. No. Kelly Olynyk at 49. I didn't even mention Hassan Whiteside's out for the next 2 weeks. So, Bam Adebayo is going to start, but Kelly Olynyk is the better fantasy option. He's the better DFS play. He's the better seasonal play. If you're adding one person, it should be Olynyk over Adebayo. Now, as for the GPP value or the DFS value, Olynyk is at 4,900 and he's got 35-point upside. So I like him for tournaments and I actually feel decently about him in cash. As for Adebayo, he is at 4,700, so only $200 cheaper. I'm not as big on him. He had 20 points in 31 minutes in the last game. Sure, you could throw him in a GPP, but I don't feel strongly about his ability to accumulate points the way that I think that Kelly Olynyk can do it. Dwighty Howard at 7,900, no Whiteside to deal with. I think Dwight could absolutely monster Olynyk, and you could have some. Now, Adebayo's defense has been pretty good, but I think Dwight might be able to have his way there. And at 7,900, I think that Howard is a pretty strong DFS option. On DraftKings for tournaments, it's the Duke at 3,800. Bam Adebayo at 41. That's a decent price there, much better than the FanDuel price. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist at 42 and Batum at 6,000. And for cash, it's Olynyk at 44, which is a strong price. And Dwight Howard at 7,500. The last game of the night, it's the New Orleans Pelicans and the Utah Jazz. No spread at the moment for this one. No injuries for us to report on, apart from we need to check the status of Rocket Rodney Hood and Raul Neto, who missed today's game. It's a back-to-back. If they are out, obviously Alec Burks gets extra run, and Royce O'Neal has also been benefiting with a couple of extra minutes thrown onto Ravishing Rick, onto Don Mitchell, onto Jingle and Joe a little bit as well. At point guard, Rubio at 5,400. Really like that, especially if Rocket is out. That's a really good play, I think, for Rubio there. And then you've got Rondo and Jameer Nelson. I don't want anything to do with those guys. At shooting guard, Etuan Moore at 3,700. You can do better there. Rocket at 5,900. If he is in, he is a tournament play to me, but I'm a little bit cautious about thinking that he is going to be in. While Don Mitchell at 6,800 has been putting up the good numbers, but I still think that that's more of a tournament play than a cash play, just given how high the salary is. For cash, I much prefer Drew Holiday at 6,600, who is absolutely crushing it. But someone asked me today, why is Holiday's assists and turnovers so low in the projections on Basketball Monster? And that's because playing with Rondo, his numbers are insanely low, like half the turnover rate and half the assist rate versus when he is playing with Rondo on the bench. So that's why his season-long projections have dipped in those assist and turnover categories for Drew Holiday. Alec Burks at 3,600. Of course, if Rocket is out, that is a very good price for a guy who dropped almost 50 points today. At small forward, Jingle and Joe at 5,600 is a little bit too expensive. Tarbo, no. Darius Miller, not feeling too much there. At power forward, Tone Davis, 10-4. He'll be back from his ejection, so that is totally fine to consider using him at that sort of a price. It's a nice salary there. While Derek Favors at 74, automatically, I would go, yeah, that's great. But Boog, Tone Davis, I'm a little bit cautious, so I would only be tournamenting Derek Favors. That's probably about it. Jonas Jerebko's the other guy here. He's at 38. He's been strong. I don't hate him for GPP. He's a really cheap option that enables you to get some other high-profile priced guys in. Boog at 10.7. Yep, that's a good price for Boog, and we're not going to be really rostering Epe Udo anywhere. Let's round this out with DraftKings on tournaments. Jingle and Joe's at 49, a much better price there, while Don Mitchell at 66 is a GPP. And for cash, you got Ravishing Rick at 56, Drew Holiday 62, Tone Davis 10-4, and Boog is at 10,900. Let's go through some Yahoo picks now. For tournaments, Brad Beal, Chrissy Dunn, Nick Batum, Domantas Sabonis. Of course, if Turner is out, then he becomes a cash guy. Oubre, Georgie Hill, Joshy Richardson, Tyler Johnson, Frank Mason, Satoransky, Macklemore, CJ Miles, Jonas Jerebko, the Duke, Wayne Allington. For cash, Lance Stevenson, Kelly Olynyk, Pascal Siakam, Bam Adebayo, John Simmons, Willie Cauley-Stein, Dwight Howard, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Karl Anthony Towns are all fairly strong cash plays on Yahoo. For Moneyball for tournaments, it's Steph. We've got Az Gordon, Chrissy Dunn, Don Mitchell, Nick Batum, Evan Fournier, Kelly Oubre, Jonas Valanciunas, Joshy Richardson, Bojan Bogdanovic, Frankie Mason, Satoransky, Kaminsky, Macklemore. And for cash plays, Kelly Olynyk, Bam Adebayo, Rubio, John Simmons, Avery Bradley, Reggie Jackson, The Hammer, Steven Adams, Otto Porter, Markkanen, DeRozan, Dwight Howard, Kyle Lowry, Beal, Aldridge, Durant, Davis, Cousins, and Westbrook. And for draft stars for tournaments, Curry, Paulie George, The Hammer, Nick Batum, JaMychal Green, Domantas Sabonis, Georgie Hill, Kid Gilchrist, Joshy Richardson, Frankie Mason. And for cash, we've got Tyler Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, Pat Mills, Bam Adebayo, John Simmons, Avery Bradley, Dwighty Howard, Lauri Markkanen, Bradles Beal, Karl Anthony Towns, Kev Durant, Tone Davis, and Boog Cousins. And that wraps it up for another week of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. Check out our sponsors for the week, which have been ZipRecruiter and, of course, Draft. And check out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network as well as BasketballMonster.com. Follow me on Twitter at RedRock_Beeble and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That's a great way of supporting the show. You can also find this show and subscribe on Google Play, on TuneIn, on Stitcher, and on Spotify, and of course on YouTube. Give me a thumbs up, give us a subscription, and you can even set the notification alert so you know when the new episode goes live. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Richard Jefferson.